Hello, welcome back to All for United WSC. The Women's World Cup is over and we are straight into transfer talk on All for United WSC. As you may have seen, obviously the Lionesses did fall to Spain over the weekend, but we're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about some United transfer potential news because it's kicking off now, obviously, with Geyse signing not so long ago as well officially. So I've got Tyler onto the channel to talk all about the other Brazilian that we are currently linked to, obviously Kerolin, currently over in America. Some fans might have seen her obviously with Brazil at the World Cup as well. So firstly, Tyler, thank you so much for joining us. Obviously another one with the time difference and things like that. We've managed to make this one work. So appreciate you coming on during your...
Happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me on.
During your early afternoon on this one. So I'll just dive straight into it and ask you kind of what the latest is with this one. It's kind of one that United fans have known for a while. It was kind of rumoured pre-World Cup that there was an interest there. I think most United fans knew that this wasn't going to happen pre-World Cup, obviously, with all the focus being on that. You put a tweet out the other day, obviously, talking about this in terms of the fees and all things that might happen there. So we'll get into all of that as well. But where are we with this one? What is the kind of latest and the feeling from an American side looking at this potential transfer?
Yeah, so I think where we're at now is there's been some kind of negotiations. I'm not sure where those took place. But what I've been told is negotiations are going to be taking place in the United States soon. So my understanding is Kerolin wants to move, but she's also happy in North Carolina. So it's kind of I guess it's a situation if she wants to push for the move now or if she's content to wait until January. I've heard both. I've heard that it's not going to happen until January. I've heard it might happen now. So Kerolin arrived back in the United States on Friday. She was the last player from the World Cup for the Courage to arrive back. So she's been training by herself this week with, I guess, with a couple players that were left behind while the team traveled out to the West Coast for their game last night. But yeah, that's kind of the gist of what's going on at the moment from what I've heard.
As I say, you mentioned obviously negotiation from obviously because we know there's going to be a fee involved in this, with it obviously not being a free transfer yet. What kind of fee are we talking about? You tweeted the other day, or it was in one of your articles when you're talking about, this is likely going to need to be an NWSL record and close to a kind of world record. Obviously, we know that Kira Walsh currently got that price tag as the world record fee. What kind of numbers do you think it would need to maybe go above a world record fee? We've seen United obviously have already spent a couple of $100,000 on Geyse from Barcelona. Do you think maybe United need to push above that world record? Do you think just below it's going to be about right? Where do you think the kind of numbers are when it comes to this one? Obviously, we know there's obviously the difference obviously with dollars to pounds and so on as well in that.
Yeah, I think the world record right now for NWSL outgoing transfers was Lindsay Horan when she went to Lyon recently. That was around 300,000 euros. I've been told that it's above that is what the deal is currently being talked about, but I don't think it's going to have to pass the record fee that Walsh set. To my understanding, it's kind of be in that range between what Horan was at and what Walsh is at. Probably closer down toward Horan's level because she's got basically 1 year left on her contract. It'll expire in January 2025. So I think that probably plays a part in it. But from what I've heard, it is going to break the NWSL record if it goes through. But I don't think it will surpass or meet the current world record.
Yeah, I mean, it would be quite something to obviously, as you mentioned, obviously, Kira Walsh is about £400,000, obviously, in euros. That's close to the 500 mark, which I can't see us getting. So obviously, you mentioned around there, about the 300,000 euro mark as well. So above that, so we're probably looking between, around the kind of 350, 400,000 kind of mark. Yeah. If we're putting kind of numbers on it from that point of view. Obviously, from a North Carolina kind of point of view, what do you think obviously is their position on this? Because they're obviously not going to want to lose her. Obviously, every team wants to keep their kind of best players around. What do you think is the feeling from their point? Obviously, you mentioned obviously about January. Is that obviously a more likely possibility? Obviously, at the end of the NWSL season and so on. Is that maybe more likely? Do you think they're holding out for a higher fee? What do you think is the kind of feeling from a North Carolina point of view?
I would say the biggest thing is they would love to keep her for the rest of the season. They're in a good position. They're second in the table right now. They're in the Final Four of the Challenge Cup tournament. Kerolin's obviously a big part of the team. She's the leading goal scorer on the season. She's like the most attacking threat that we have. Probably one of the best in the league as far as dribbling, attacking one-on-one. So I think the Courage don't want to lose her now. But if Kerolin's pushing the issue, I don't think they're going to try to stand in the way of that as long as their monetary terms are met. Last year, we had Fuka who left. We had an option to re-sign her, but she wanted to play for Liverpool, so we let her go. The Courage have never really been a team that's like force players to stay when they're not, when they're ready to go. So I think the biggest issues will be if Kerolin really wants that move now versus in January, but I don't think the Courage are going to try to force her to stay if she's like already checked out.
It's interesting. I've kind of got a two-part question off the back of that. And so, obviously, you mentioned about her stance on this. Two kind of things, really. Do you think, obviously, she is pushing this for maybe a summer move? Do you think that's something that she would do? She would actively try and push this move? And secondly, obviously, you mentioned personal terms is another factor in this. By the sounds of what you're saying, that doesn't sound like this is going to be a problem in this case.
Yeah, I'm not really sure if she would push for it. I think her arriving back later than the rest of the World Cup players was kind of a question mark for fans that were looking at this, because Brazil obviously was eliminated pretty early in the group stages, and she was the last one back. The USA players, the Denmark players that played after that made it back before her. I think that's one thing that raised the question: is she trying to force the move? Is it something like that, or? But like we don't know. We don't know if I haven't heard if she was allotted that time to be back. In a press conference last week, North Carolina Courage head coach Sean Nahas said she was expected back that day on that Friday. So I don't know if that was planned all along or if that was, last minute. They're like, you have to be back, kind of thing. But I mean, Kerolin is the kind of player that's going to do everything for the team that she's playing on. So it would kind of strike me that she wouldn't be, kind of trying to hold the Courage hostage to force the move. She might be saying, I want this, I want to go. But I don't think she's going to be the kind of player that's going to try to force it even. But yeah, her showing back up late was kind of like it kind of made people question, like, what's going on with this?
No, it's certainly one. I think if that's obviously from a United point of view, we look into every little detail of everything that's going on with any player we're linked with, or our own players that are potentially moving as well. I remember on the last day of the season, people were looking at Russo and Honor's hand, like waving to the crowd, like analysing every little thing of that to see if we could make something out. So yeah, I think that's definitely a fan thing where we look at every little detail on that one.
Yeah, I've definitely found that United fans are definitely like that. I've been keeping up with it with Kerolin. So, yeah, I see stuff on Twitter that they're tweeting. I'm like, well, I need to go check that out because they're like her Instagram stories and everything. So.
Yeah, it's certainly one. If it does happen, it's going to make a lot of United fans very happy. That's for sure. As far as obviously going back to kind of from a club's point of view, I don't know whether you've got anything to add on this. Obviously, there was talk of other clubs kind of looking at Kerolin as well. Do you still think that's the case? Do you know that that's the case? That are there other clubs, or is this purely a thing now? It's United this summer, or if it goes to January, there might be other clubs that look at this as well.
Yeah, I would say the second option. If she goes now, I think it's Manchester United's the only option. If it goes on until the offseason of the NWSL in January, I think that could be potential for other teams, but the main name I've heard is definitely Manchester United. So I think Geyse going there is a big part of that. Obviously, they played together with Brazil. They played together at Madrid in Spain. So I think that's another reason that she would want to go there. I think playing in the Champions League is another thing that kind of is driving her to want to move to Manchester United or to Europe in general, to a top club. So right now, I think if it happens now, it's Manchester United. If it happens in January, I'm still leaning toward Manchester United, but I think other clubs might be looking at that too.
It's certainly going to be hard if the likes of Leon or a Chelsea or somebody like that start getting their claws in, because obviously being well-established Champions League clubs, obviously United can offer the money, but maybe we're not at that level yet where we are an established Champions League club year in, year out.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of, obviously you mentioned JC there. I've got kind of two I think you've literally just answered this question, to be honest. Obviously you mentioned about JC obviously signing there as well. Do you think, obviously, from a Kerolin point of view, that will help, this transfer? That obviously, if she goes to other clubs as well, there's going to be those relationships where, wherever she goes. But with United, obviously, she's got JC there, obviously Ivana Fuso as well, that she'll know, kind of in and around the squad as well, and other players that do speak the language as well that can help her with that. That maybe that's a potential positive, and also the fact that United are showing obviously more ambition now. We're going after players, JC from Barcelona, and spending money in the way that we haven't seen in the past.
Yeah, I think for sure, JC being there is a pretty big one. When she came to the Courage, we obviously had Dabinia at the time, so I think that was a big part of her coming to the Courage, was just having that Brazilian teammate that she could, get comfortable in the team with. So I think that's definitely a positive if they're trying to get Kerolin there, that they already have another really strong attacking player like Geyse. So I would say that definitely is going to play a part in her pushing to go to United, but we'll see, I guess.
It's really a link up that all United fans want to see. Those two Brazilians up front, Leah Golden on the left, a couple of players in behind, a Tuni Builder and so on. Oh, that's what we want to see. I kind of find a question in terms of what, I guess this is more of a personal opinion from yourself in terms of where you think this is going to end up. Obviously, from the WSL point of view, the transfer window's still got a while to go yet. United seem to be, this is the deal that United seem to be pushing the most. Obviously, you mentioned about the talks in the States and so on at the start of this. What, in your personal opinion, where can you see this transfer going? Can you see it being done this summer, obviously to United? Can you see it being done this summer to another club? Can you see it going to January? From your personal point of view, where can you see this ending up for Kerolin?
I think I'm pretty much thinking it's going to happen in January. I do think she's going to move on soon. I think they're not going to want to just let her walk away when they're going to be able to get a large fee for her. So I think if she doesn't move in the next couple weeks, then it's definitely going to happen in January. And it sounds like Manchester United's committed to going after her and fitting her straight into the starting 11, which I know is something that she's going to expect if she moves to another team. So I would say it's going to happen in January based on my feelings toward the transfer.
It'll be interesting if it does happen in January from a United point of view, in terms of whether United would then go elsewhere this summer to try and get somebody else, which then further down the line, obviously you mentioned with Kerolin, would that affect? I'm not too sure. I think for United, it definitely makes sense to get it done this summer.
There's definitely the push still for it to happen this summer. I think it's going to come down to how bad the Courage want to keep her for the rest of the season, with title hopes on the line, playoff hopes, Challenge Cup hopes. So, they're in the running for everything right now, and Kerolin's been a big part of that earlier on in the season. So, I think that's what it's really going to come down to. It's not a matter of the financials or Kerolin's, wishes. I think it's going to come down to how bad do the Courage want to keep her until the off season.
It certainly is, because that fee is only going to get lower the longer it goes on. From any club's point of view, as you said, obviously the closer it gets to her contract end date, the fee is always going to come down, because obviously you can get her on a free if she's refused to sign an extension. Certainly going to be one that rumbles on over the next kind of few weeks and month or so to keep an eye on. But Tyler, thank you so much for joining us. Is there anything you want to shout out while you're on it? Obviously, I can see your Twitter at is on screen, but obviously I know you do some articles and some writing and things like that. Where can people find your stuff?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at ttrent4. Most of my written work regarding the Courage and Charlotte FC and MLS are at Top Bin 90. I do a little bit of work outside of that. I recently just started working with Her Football Hub over in the UK. So I'll be doing some articles for them. As far as Kerolin, there's a really good article about her. She actually wrote it as like a letter to her mom before the World Cup. If you all haven't saw it, it's called Letter to a Warrior Mom. That was on the Players Tribune. It's a really good article. Kind of tells you a lot about her as a person and the struggles she had to go through to get where she is, and the kind of player and person you're going to get. So I would highly suggest that as extra reading for anybody interested in Kerolin.
Definitely make sure I'll put that in the description actually, so it's easy for people to find, as well as your Twitter at. Thank you everyone for watching. Make sure you're liking the video, subscribing, all of that stuff, following Tyler as well, and we shall see you guys in the next one.